The air in downtown Chicago that night was thick with tension, every siren echoing like a harbinger of doom. In a city haunted by unsolved crimes and shadowed alleyways, a single envelope would later change the life of one man and expose a truth authorities tried to bury. Imagine sitting behind bars for a crime you didn't commit, counting the days that feel like decades, and then a fragile piece of paper, marked with trembling handwriting, arrives. Could a letter truly topple decades of injustice, overturn a conviction, and unravel the threads of a system that had condemned you without mercy? Tonight, on Crime Chronicles TVc, we explore the story of truth, betrayal, and the relentless fight for justice in The Letter That Freed an Innocent Man. Disclaimer: content is for awareness and educational purposes only. Viewer discretion advised. In 2011, Daniel Reynolds, a 32-year-old father from Chicago, was sentenced to life imprisonment for a murder he insisted he never committed. The crime shook the city. A high-profile shooting of a local businessman, framed with circumstantial evidence, witness testimonies that later proved unreliable, and a public desperate for closure. Yet, behind the walls of Stateville Correctional Center, Daniel's days were filled not with despair, but with a quiet determination to uncover the truth. Friends and family fought on the outside, while Daniel's nights were haunted by the memory of the day his freedom was stolen. Inside the prison, Daniel faced the harsh realities that come with a life sentence: harsh guards, dangerous inmates, and the suffocating weight of injustice. But in 2018, a breakthrough arrived in the most unlikely form. A letter from an anonymous source claiming knowledge of critical evidence that had been overlooked. The envelope arrived during dinner, sliding under his cell door like a whisper of hope in a place designed to crush it. The contents of the letter were chilling, yet illuminating, a confession from someone directly involved, detailed enough to challenge the prosecution's narrative. Suddenly, the evidence that had once condemned him became a beacon of truth. Could this fragile piece of paper truly undo years of wrongful imprisonment? Could it expose systemic failures that kept an innocent man behind bars? As Daniel's legal team pored over the revelations, the city outside buzzed with anticipation. Journalists sensed a story that would shake the foundations of public trust. Advocates for justice saw hope for the first time in years. And inside his cell, Daniel held that letter, feeling the impossible. That redemption might finally be within reach. But would the system allow him to walk free? Or would corruption, bureaucracy, and fear of accountability crush this fragile thread of hope? The answer lay in the next chapter, where every revelation threatened to rewrite the story of his life. If this story has gripped you so far, comment "Justice Now." Share this story with those who value truth. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVc and follow for more real-life, chilling, and inspiring crime stories. Stay with us as the fight for Daniel Reynolds' freedom unfolds in the next part. The following weeks in Stateville Correctional Center were a tense dance of hope and fear for Daniel Reynolds. Every hour that passed felt like a lifetime as his attorneys scrambled to verify the authenticity of the letter. For years, Daniel had endured interrogations, false accusations, and the deafening silence of justice delayed. Now, with a single stroke of ink on fragile paper, the walls of his prison cell seemed to tremble with possibility. Outside the prison, investigative journalists began digging deeper into the case. They uncovered discrepancies in witness statements, missing evidence, and a prosecution file that seemed almost too neat, as if someone had carefully erased traces of doubt. Chicago was a city that had grown cynical from countless unsolved murders and systemic failures. Yet this story was different. It carried a human face, a man whose innocence had been eclipsed by fear, bureaucracy, and public demand for closure. Inside the courtroom, tension mounted. Daniel's attorneys presented the new evidence, a confession embedded with precise details of the crime scene that only someone directly involved could know. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, as the weight of decades of wrongful conviction pressed against the walls of the room. Could the justice system, so rigid and unforgiving, finally recognize its error? Could a single piece of paper overturn years of punishment, lost time, and a life scarred by injustice? For Daniel, each court appearance was a storm. He faced whispers of skepticism, media scrutiny, and even subtle hostility from law enforcement officers who had built careers around his conviction. Yet, in these moments of pressure, he discovered an inner resilience he never knew existed. Prison had hardened him, but it had also forged a relentless pursuit of truth. He began mentoring younger inmates, using his knowledge of the system to teach them to survive, and perhaps to never lose hope. As the legal battle intensified, the mysterious letter's origins remained elusive. Who had sent it? Was it a remorseful accomplice, a brave insider, or someone seeking justice from the shadows? Each theory brought more questions than answers, yet every revelation pulled Daniel closer to freedom. The courtroom drama was only the beginning. Every twist and turn revealed dark secrets about corruption, fear, and the desperate lengths some would go to protect their power. As the jury deliberated, Daniel sat quietly, holding on to hope like a fragile lifeline. Could the truth really prevail against decades of institutional inertia? Would the system finally acknowledge that justice had failed, and that a man had been robbed of his life for a crime he did not commit? If this story has gripped you so far, comment, "Truth prevails." Share this story with those who care about justice. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVc and follow for more real-life, chilling, and inspiring crime stories. Stay with us as Daniel's fight for freedom reaches a critical turning point in the next part. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation as the next phase of Daniel Reynolds' hearing began. The air felt almost electric, each heartbeat echoing like a drum signaling a turning point in a story decades in the making. Witnesses who had once testified against him were now being questioned under a new lens, their statements unraveling thread by thread. The prosecution, once so confident, now appeared defensive, each response carefully measured, as if sensing the tide of justice slowly shifting. Outside, the city of Chicago followed every update closely. Social media erupted with hashtags demanding justice, while local news stations debated the implications of overturning a high-profile conviction. People began to ask questions they had long avoided. How many others had been wrongfully convicted? How fragile was the system meant to protect them? The case became more than Daniel's fight. It became a symbol of institutional accountability, a spotlight on the cracks in the justice system that too often go unnoticed. Inside the courtroom, Daniel maintained a calm exterior, but inside, emotions raged like a storm. He thought of the years lost, missed birthdays, holidays behind bars, the simple freedom to walk without suspicion. And yet he also recognized the resilience these years had built in him. Every insult endured, every harsh sentence, every unfair judgment had shaped him into a man who now understood not only the mechanics of the system, but the human cost of its errors. He had become a mentor, a counselor, even a source of hope for others trapped in similar circumstances. The turning point came when forensic experts presented new evidence corroborating the claims in the letter. Tiny details overlooked during the initial investigation suddenly became crucial. Fingerprints that didn't match, timelines that didn't add up, alibis that had been dismissed too easily. Each revelation made the jury sit a little straighter, their expressions betraying doubt where there had once been certainty. Questions hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Had justice really been served back then? Could the truth finally be acknowledged in the open court of law? Yet even as hope surged, shadows lingered. The identity of the letter's author remained a mystery, an unseen hand guiding the course of justice. Was it someone seeking redemption? A whistleblower risking everything? Or a friend who had never given up on the truth? The suspense was unbearable, but the gravity of Daniel's potential exoneration left no room for hesitation. The courtroom became a stage for redemption, for reckoning, and for the undeniable power of truth against all odds. As the hearing adjourned for the day, Daniel walked back to his holding area, thoughts heavy but heart resolute. Could the system that had failed him for so long finally offer justice? Could a man wronged for decades now step into the light of freedom? If this story has captivated you so far, comment "Justice for Daniel." Share this story with anyone who values truth. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVc and follow for more chilling and inspiring real-life crime stories. Stay tuned, because in the next part, Daniel's battle for freedom reaches its most intense and shocking climax yet. The tension in the courtroom reached a fever pitch as Daniel's legal team presented the most compelling evidence yet. The letter that had set this chain of events into motion was finally revealed in its entirety, its contents meticulously cross-examined and verified. Every word seemed to carry weight, as if the pen itself had been a beacon guiding justice through years of darkness. Reporters leaned forward, cameras capturing every reaction, and the public watched in rapt silence, knowing that this case had transcended the personal story of one man. It had become a testament to the enduring fight for truth and justice. Inside the courtroom, jurors whispered among themselves, eyes wide with disbelief. Statements that had once seemed final were now being questioned, every detail scrutinized for discrepancies. Witnesses who had testified against Daniel decades ago appeared uneasy under renewed scrutiny. Memories that were once assumed to be absolute were now revealed as flawed, manipulated, or misremembered. Each revelation added to a mounting pressure that made the courtroom feel almost claustrophobic, as if the walls themselves were closing in on the truth, demanding acknowledgement. Daniel's family watched from the gallery, their emotions a tangled web of relief, anticipation, and fear. Years of pain, injustice, and heartache had led to this moment, and yet the weight of what was unfolding left them almost breathless. Daniel's mother, once frail from worry, clutched her husband's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face, silently praying that her son's long journey would finally find its rightful conclusion. The turning point came when a former corrections officer, now retired, stepped forward to testify. Their statements confirmed crucial elements outlined in the letter, exposing systemic oversights and potential misconduct that had played a role in Daniel's wrongful conviction. The courtroom gasped as one damning truth after another was unveiled, a cascade of revelations that made even the most skeptical observers reconsider the case. Questions that had lingered for years. How could this have happened? Who was responsible? Began to demand answers, forcing everyone in the room to confront the uncomfortable reality of justice delayed. Yet even as the evidence mounted, doubt lingered like a shadow. The defense knew that exoneration was possible, but the prosecution had their own strategies, attempting to undermine witnesses and challenge the credibility of the letter. The battle between truth and obstruction intensified, each side digging in with relentless determination. The tension was palpable, every eye in the courtroom fixed on the scales of justice, waiting for the moment when balance would finally be restored. As the day ended and the court recessed, Daniel sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. Freedom, once a distant dream, now shimmered just within reach. But would the system allow him to claim it? Could one letter, written in courage and hope, truly undo decades of injustice? If this story has gripped your attention so far, comment "Truth Prevails." Share it with those who believe in justice, subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVc, and follow for more shocking, emotional, and real-life crime stories. Stay tuned, because in the next and final part, Daniel's fight reaches its dramatic conclusion, and the answer to decades of questions will finally be revealed. The day of reckoning arrived with a mixture of tension and anticipation that seemed to electrify the entire courthouse. Daniel sat at the defense table, his hands folded but trembling ever so slightly, the letter resting beside him like a talisman of hope. Every person in the room, jurors, lawyers, spectators, knew the weight of the moment. For Daniel, it was not just a trial, It was a reckoning with decades of stolen time, of life lived under suspicion, and of dreams postponed indefinitely. The final testimonies were delivered with intensity that bordered on theatrical. Witnesses recounted details that had once been buried, and their voices shook the very foundations of the prosecution's case. For the first time in years, a narrative that had been silenced began to dominate the room. Evidence that had seemed negligible decades ago now gleamed with undeniable clarity, each revelation pulling the threads of truth tighter around the fabric of justice. Even the prosecution appeared unsettled, their confident veneer cracking as the weight of the letter's implications became impossible to dismiss. When the judge called for closing statements, silence enveloped the courtroom. Daniel's attorney spoke with measured intensity, weaving the story of injustice and hope, highlighting the courage it took for the letter to be written, and the unwavering faith that truth would eventually surface. The words resonated beyond legal argument. They spoke to every person in the room who had ever witnessed unfairness, who had ever questioned the system, and who had ever prayed for redemption. The jury, now visibly moved, leaned forward, their eyes reflecting both the gravity and the humanity of the case. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the jury deliberated. Each tick of the clock echoed like a drumbeat in Daniel's chest, every second a reminder of years lost. Finally, the moment arrived. The courtroom held its collective breath as the foreperson read the verdict. Not guilty. The sound seemed almost surreal, suspended in the air like a fragile note of triumph. Daniel's knees buckled slightly, and tears, decades in the making, streamed down his face. Family members rushed forward, embraces mingling with sobs, their relief and joy uncontainable. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing, capturing a moment that would soon echo far beyond the walls of the courthouse. But the story did not end with freedom alone. The case sparked national attention, forcing a reevaluation of old protocols, accountability in the justice system, and the power of advocacy and persistence. Daniel, once a symbol of despair, now became a beacon of hope. He devoted himself to counseling others who had been wrongfully accused, transforming pain into purpose, tragedy into inspiration, and injustice into advocacy. His journey was a testament to resilience, courage, and the enduring power of one letter to change the course of a life. As the courtroom emptied, Daniel stood on the steps, the sunlight casting long shadows across the plaza. He breathed in deeply, feeling the weight of freedom and the exhilaration of vindication. The past could not be rewritten, but the future was finally his. Questions that had haunted him for decades about trust, truth, and the fragility of justice now felt like fuel for a mission greater than himself. Could one man's perseverance truly change a system? The answer in Daniel's case was a resounding yes. If this story moved you, comment "Justice Served," share it with those who need to believe in hope, and subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVc for more gripping, real-life crime stories. Follow and turn on the notification bell, because the world of shocking, emotional, and inspiring crime chronicles never stops, and the next story could change the way you see justice forever. Without a doubt, Daniel's story leaves us questioning the balance between mercy and accountability, and reflecting on the lives affected by delayed justice. His journey reminds us that truth may be silenced, but it cannot be extinguished. And sometimes, a single voice, one courageous letter, is enough to spark monumental change. This is Crime Chronicles TVc, your daily dose of real crime stories. Stay tuned for more gripping tales of justice, betrayal, and survival that will keep you on the edge of your seat.